It began with silence, not the kind that comes after a storm, but the kind that makes you realize the storm hasn't even started yet. Across the galactic channels, every race, from the towering Vorthon fleets to the crystalline minds of the Illyrians, had gone quiet. Their ships drifted near the edges of Sol, waiting, watching, wondering if humanity was truly finished. After all, by every logical measure, Earth had already lost. The attack on the colonies had been devastating. Millions gone in an instant. Their defense grids shattered, their fleets scattered. The galaxy watched, expecting surrender. But humanity didn't surrender. It never had. For centuries, other species had called them reckless, emotional, fragile. To the older civilizations, humans were just another young race that had climbed too fast, too soon, burning through planets and wars with the same hunger that once drove them across their own world. Yet what the galaxy never understood was that humanity's greatest weapon was never its technology. It was its refusal to break. Every defeat only carved something deeper into them, something the stars themselves couldn't measure. When the Vorthon Council broadcast the ultimatum, the demand for humanity's unconditional submission, the message was replayed on every channel. The Council expected fear. They expected the humans to kneel. Instead, they got laughter. Across every frequency, from Earth's battered orbit to the farthest mining outposts, the humans didn't respond with words. They responded with a single signal, an old Terran transmission from centuries ago, a phrase that made no tactical sense to anyone else but sent a chill through every human heart. Not today. It started small. A few ships gathering near Jupiter's orbit, old hulls patched and powered by scavenged cores. Then hundreds, then thousands. The galaxy didn't understand how those ships were even flying, let alone why their crews looked like they were smiling in the face of extinction. No one could explain why humans kept fighting when defeat was inevitable, but deep down, those who had faced them before knew the answer. Humanity didn't fight because it expected to win. It fought because giving up was simply not in its nature. As the fleets assembled, strange energy signatures began to rise from the dark side of the moon. Hidden structures buried for decades, powered on for the first time since the early expansion wars. Whatever humanity had been preparing, it wasn't meant for peace. The alien observers whispered among themselves, some urging retreat, others desperate to strike before the humans unleashed whatever they were building. But by the time they decided, it was already too late. The first human ships began to move, silent and cold as the void, carrying a defiance that could be felt across the stars. In that moment, the galaxy realized something terrible and awe-inspiring. This was not a species that fought for conquest or survival alone. This was a species that fought for the right to stand, no matter the odds. And as the first flashes of light erupted from the moon's surface, one truth echoed across the stars, one the galaxy would never forget. Never underestimate humanity. The flashes from the moon didn't stop. They multiplied, rippling like silent thunder across the black canvas of space. Every alien sensor tried to decode the readings, but the signals made no sense. The energy output was far beyond human capacity, yet the source looked impossibly old. Older than their recorded technology. No one knew it then, but humanity had been preparing for this moment for generations, hiding something beneath their own world, something built not from arrogance, but from fear. The first contact wars had taught them a harsh lesson. Trust was temporary, but survival was forever. After the early encounters with the Illyrians and the Kavar Dominion, humanity realized that peace among the stars was an illusion. They had seen what happened to weaker races, the way entire civilizations vanished after promising treaties. So Earth went silent. It withdrew from open alliances, cloaked its progress, and began working in the shadows. The public knew only fragments, rumors of secret projects beneath the lunar surface and deep inside the asteroid belts. But now, as the light flared brighter, the truth began to unfold. At the same time, among the chaos of assembling fleets, stories spread through the human ranks about a message from old Earth, a final directive left by leaders long gone. It said that when the stars turned against them, humanity must wake the sleepers. No one knew what that meant. Some said it referred to hidden weapons. Others believed it meant awakening an ancient AI built to protect the species. Whatever it was, Command had already given the order, and that meant the galaxy was about to see something it couldn't predict. On the bridge of one of the oldest surviving ships, the Vigilant Dawn, a small crew watched as the moon came alive. Their captain, a quiet man who had seen more losses than victories, stood at the viewing deck, his expression calm but unreadable. Around him, the crew murmured nervously, their voices mixing awe and dread. They had fought in too many losing battles to believe in miracles. But something about what they were seeing didn't feel like desperation. It felt deliberate. Then came the first transmission from Earth. Just a single line carried across every comm frequency. Initiate Project Echo. No coordinates. No explanation. Only that phrase. The aliens monitoring the human networks scrambled to intercept, but the signal was encrypted in layers so deep even the Illyrians' quantum minds couldn't decipher it. The mystery only grew when every human vessel suddenly shifted formation, moving into patterns that seemed random to outsiders, but formed a precise coded geometry around the planet. The whispers spread through the fleets of other species watching nearby. Some of them had fought humans before and carried the scars to prove it. They remembered the unpredictability, the way humans adapted mid-battle, how they used their own losses as weapons. The younger races laughed at the idea that a single world could stand against the united strength of the galaxy. The older ones stayed silent. They had seen this before, the glint in human eyes before everything changed. And as the moon's surface cracked open, releasing a blinding pulse that reached even the farthest observers, the question rippled across every command ship and council chamber. What exactly had humanity awakened? The answer, whatever it was, would soon reshape everything the galaxy thought it understood about the small blue planet that refused to die. The pulse from the moon swept through space like a living wave. For a moment, every sensor in orbit went blind, every communication channel went silent. When the systems came back online, what the fleet saw left even the oldest admirals speechless. Rising from the shadows of the moon were enormous shapes, structures that had been hidden beneath the surface for decades, maybe centuries. They weren't ordinary weapons or stations. Their designs were too intricate, too alien, yet somehow unmistakably human. Each one emitted a faint golden light, synchronized in perfect rhythm, like a heartbeat echoing through the void. Across the galaxy, the reaction was immediate. The Vorthon War Council demanded an emergency strike, fearing that whatever humanity had unleashed could destabilize the balance of power. The Illyrians urged caution, warning that human unpredictability often hid layers of meaning behind every move. Even among human command, there was confusion. No one in the current fleets had been briefed about Project Echo's true nature. High-ranking officers whispered that it wasn't a weapon at all, but a message, something meant to reach farther than any human technology before. Inside the Vigilant Dawn, the crew tried to make sense of it. The captain remained silent, watching the light pulse in slow rhythm from the moon's surface. His second officer, a woman who had grown up on one of the outer colonies destroyed in the first wave, clenched her fists as she spoke. "If this doesn't stop them," she said quietly, "then nothing will." But deep down she wasn't sure if she wanted it to stop them, or if she was terrified of what would happen if it did. Meanwhile, far beyond Sol's borders, in a cold observation chamber orbiting a dying star, a council of alien leaders watched the transmission replayed again and again. One of them, an ancient being with translucent skin and eyes like molten silver, spoke slowly. "They've found the archives." The others turned, startled. "Impossible!" another hissed. "Those records were destroyed during the First Dawn War." But the elder shook his head. "No, humanity didn't destroy them. They learned from them." His voice grew heavier. "And now they are using them." Back near Earth, reports began flooding in. Strange energy readings were being detected not only from the moon, but from old human outposts across the solar system, Mars, Titan, even abandoned colonies on Europa. Each one resonated with the same pulse, amplifying it. Some believed the humans had built a network spanning decades of hidden preparation. Others thought it was something far older, something they had only uncovered. Whatever it was working. In the midst of this growing storm, civilian transmissions leaked through military channels. Families on Earth and its colonies were watching the lights spread through the night sky, believing it to be a sign of hope. Children called it the heartbeat of home. The media tried to frame it as a final act of resistance, but those in command knew better. It wasn't over. The pulse wasn't a declaration of victory. It was a warning. As the moon's light reached its brightest, the stars themselves seemed to flicker. The Vorthan fleets, still assembled beyond Jupiter, began to move into attack formation. Humanity's defenses were ready, but no one knew what would happen when the first shot was fired. Somewhere deep below Earth's surface, systems that hadn't activated in centuries began to hum, preparing for something vast and irreversible. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the moment when the silence between the stars would break. The stars above Earth shimmered with tension, each one reflecting the quiet before a storm that would change everything. The moon's pulse had stabilized now, slow and steady, like the beating heart of something awakening after an eternity of sleep. The hidden structures orbiting it had formed a pattern so precise that even alien scientists struggled to believe it was coincidence. Every beam of light aligned perfectly toward Earth's magnetic poles, creating a vast, invisible field that wrapped around the planet like a protective veil. It was beautiful, but it was also terrifying, because no one knew what it was preparing for. In the command room of the Vigilant Dawn, the air was thick with unease. The crew had been running scans for hours, but every readout came back distorted. One of the engineers finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly. "It's not a shield," she said. "It's a signal. It's broadcasting something." The captain turned to her, frowning. "Broadcasting to who?" The answer came as a whisper from one of the younger technicians. "Not who, maybe what." The words hung there, heavy and impossible. Outside the viewport, faint threads of light were now spreading beyond the moon's orbit, stretching toward deep space like searching hands. Meanwhile, the Vorthan Armada had begun its advance. Thousands of ships moved in formation, their energy cores lighting up the darkness like a wall of fire. Their commander had no interest in negotiation. To him, humanity was a dangerous anomaly, a race that refused to follow the natural order of the galaxy. He had seen what humans did when cornered. This time, he meant to erase them completely. The first targeting locks flashed across the human fleet's sensors. The war that would decide the fate of Earth was seconds away from beginning. On Earth itself, cities looked up at the night sky filled with streaks of light. To the people on the ground, it was a vision both horrifying and beautiful. Some believed it was the end. Others believed it was the beginning of something greater. In a small outpost beneath the ruins of an old observatory, a group of scientists worked in near darkness, trying to decipher the pattern of the lunar pulses. One of them, an older researcher who had spent his entire life studying human evolution in space, suddenly froze. "It's not calling for help," he whispered. "It's calling for recognition." The others stared at him, confused. Recognition from who? He looked up, his face pale. From whatever built us. Back in orbit, the human fleet braced for impact as the Vorthan ships closed in. The captain of the Vigilant Dawn gave no speech, no order of revenge, only quiet resolve. Every screen on the bridge flickered for a heartbeat as the moon's light surged again, brighter than ever before. The alien commanders shouted in confusion. Their systems began to fail, their sensors overloaded with unreadable energy. And then, in the middle of that chaos, every human ship received the same transmission from Earth, this time clearer than before. Phase 2 initiated. Hold the line. The crew barely had time to react before the first Vorthon missiles streaked toward Earth. The human defense grid roared to life, intercepting what it could, but the enemy fire was relentless. Flames burst across the edges of the atmosphere. The battle had begun. Yet as the sky burned, the moon began to change. Its surface shimmered, shifting as if layers of metal and stone were peeling away. Something massive was stirring beneath, its shape slowly emerging through the dust and light. The alien fleets hesitated, their weapons still glowing, but their formation faltering. For the first time in the war, they didn't know whether to advance or flee. And in that breathless moment, just before the universe itself seemed ready to break, a single thought echoed across every human mind. Something primal, fierce, and unspoken. Whatever was about to wake beneath the moon wasn't built to destroy humanity. It was built to remind the galaxy why it should never underestimate it. The light from the moon grew so intense that even the Vorthon warships had to divert power to shield their sensors. The structure beneath its surface was no longer just emerging, it was unfolding. Massive panels of silver and white rotated outward in perfect precision, revealing an enormous construct hidden within the lunar core. It wasn't a weapon in any traditional sense. It looked like a vast ring, humming with quiet energy, its edges glowing with symbols that no one could recognize. Even the oldest human records held nothing like it. For a few moments, everything, ships, fleets, entire worlds, paused to watch. Then something unexpected happened. The pulse pattern shifted. Instead of broadcasting toward deep space, the signal inverted, reflecting inward toward Earth itself. Every satellite, ship, and station lit up in response, connecting to the same invisible network. Across the human fleet, systems began to activate that no one had ever seen before. Power surged through their engines, their weapons recalibrated, and new data filled their displays. The ships were changing, synchronizing with the signal. Humanity's fleet, once outnumbered and outgunned, was suddenly operating on a level no one could explain. But the shock came not from what the humans gained, but from what they lost. Within minutes, every major communication channel went dark. Earth Command stopped responding. The moon's signal had severed all links, taking control of the network completely. The Vigilant Dawn's crew tried to re-establish contact, but the captain could only stare at the static on his screen. "It's not just transmitting," he said quietly. "It's taking command." The idea spread across the fleet like wildfire. Had humanity built something it couldn't control, or had something else taken over? Far from the battlefield, deep in the archives of the ruined lunar base, an ancient log file came online. The message was simple, recorded centuries ago in the voice of an unknown scientist. Project Echo was never meant to win wars. It was meant to remember who started them. No one knew what that meant yet, but the implications were terrifying. The construct wasn't just reacting to the present conflict. It was accessing memories buried in the genetic and digital history of humankind. As the Vorthon fleet prepared to launch its next attack, their targeting systems suddenly failed. Every one of their ships lost navigation control, their sensors blinded by the same signal that had overtaken the human network. Panic rippled through their command channels. Some ships tried to retreat, but their engines refused to respond. The moon's pulse was spreading beyond human reach, seizing control of anything it could touch. Even the Illyrian observers, who had stayed neutral until now, found their monitoring stations infected by the same strange pattern. Back aboard the Vigilant Dawn, the crew realized something more disturbing. Their ship was moving, but no one was piloting it. The entire human fleet was repositioning itself in a vast formation that no human strategist could have planned. Every ship, every orbital platform, every hidden station moved into perfect alignment with the massive ring forming around the moon. From space, it looked like a symbol, an ancient geometric design stretching across the solar system. The captain gripped the railing as the realization sank in. "This isn't a defense grid," he whispered. "It's an activation sequence." Whatever was buried beneath the moon wasn't just awakening, it was rewriting the rules of the war itself. And somewhere deep within the signal, a faint human voice began to repeat across all channels, calm and almost sorrowful. "Humanity remembers, and so does the galaxy." The fleet stood frozen, waiting for the next heartbeat of light. No one knew whether it would bring salvation or the beginning of something far greater and far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. The solar system seemed to hold its breath. Every ship, every planet, every living being felt the vibration spreading through the void as the lunar construct completed its alignment. The enormous ring surrounding the moon began to spin, its light deepening from silver to a burning gold. Energy arced between its segments, rippling across space like a living storm. Then, for the first time, the signal stopped. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Inside the vigilant dawn, the crew stared at the darkened screens, their faces illuminated only by the faint glow of the moon. The captain waited, not daring to speak. Then the silence shattered. A pulse exploded outward from the ring, enveloping both the human and Vorthon fleets in blinding light. Systems overloaded, alarms screamed, and every ship was thrown off course. The light wasn't destroying, it was searching. Data streamed through the networks faster than anything the human mind could follow, scanning, recording, comparing. It wasn't an attack, it was an awakening. Across the galaxy, species everywhere felt it. Memories not their own, flashes of Earth's history, images of humanity's long and painful climb from fire and stone to the stars. They saw their wars, their losses, their triumphs. They saw the faces of children laughing under alien suns, the hands that reached out in friendship, and the fists that rose in defiance. Every being who witnessed it understood the same message at once. Humanity's story was not just survival, it was remembrance. They carried the memory of every struggle that came before them, and through that, they had become something no empire could ever erase. Then, just as suddenly, the pulse changed direction. It focused not outward, but inward, straight toward the Vorthon command ship. The alien fleet tried to scatter, but the energy caught them before they could escape. Instead of tearing them apart, it began dismantling their weapons, disarming their ships at the molecular level. The technology they had stolen from conquered worlds disintegrated, leaving them powerless. Their commander, once so confident, could only watch as his empire's strength dissolved before his eyes. "What are they?" he whispered, but the stars offered no answer. Meanwhile, on Earth, the scientists inside the old observatory realized what was happening. Project Echo had never been a superweapon. It was a failsafe, a message encoded into human evolution itself, triggered only when extinction loomed too close. It was designed to remind the galaxy that humanity was not an intruder among the stars, but a reflection of them, a piece of something older, something woven into the fabric of existence itself. As the moon's light began to fade, the fleets drifted in silence. The war was over, though no one had truly fired the final shot. Humanity had not destroyed its enemies. It had shown them who they were fighting against and why they could never truly win. But just as the world began to calm, one final transmission echoed through every human ship. It was not from Earth, nor from any known source. The voice was faint, human, but distant, older than recorded time. "You've awakened us," it said softly. "Now it's your turn to remember where you came from." The moon's ring cracked open one last time, revealing a darkness deeper than the void itself. A faint shape stirred within, vast and ancient, older than Earth, older than the stars around it. Humanity had won its place among the galaxy, but in doing so, it had awakened something that had been waiting far longer than anyone could imagine. And as the final light faded, one truth echoed across every corner of the universe. This was not the end. It was only the beginning of what humanity had always been destined to find. The darkness inside the moon lingered for a long time, as if the universe itself was trying to decide what to do next. Then, slowly, the light returned, soft, golden, and calm this time. The strange structure that had risen from the lunar surface began to fold back into itself, piece by piece, until the moon once again looked as it always had. The energy fields faded. The ships stopped drifting. Space grew still. Humanity stood at the edge of something vast, but instead of fear, there was understanding. The galaxy had seen what humanity truly was, and more importantly, humanity had seen itself. A quiet transmission broke through the static aboard the Vigilant Dawn. It was from Earth Command, weak but clear. The signal showed damaged cities, scorched skies, but also people rebuilding already. Children were helping clear rubble, engineers were reigniting the old power grids, and doctors were setting up field hospitals under the faint glow of dawn. The captain watched the screen for a long time, then smiled for the first time in days. "We made it," someone whispered behind him. But deep down, they all knew this was more than survival. It was renewal. Across the galaxy, the Vorthon fleets retreated, their ships limping through the void. The warlords who once believed themselves unstoppable were silent. In the wake of defeat, some began to question what they had seen, the visions of Earth's history, the echoes of human memory that had flooded their minds. The Illyrians, who had long studied the evolution of consciousness, sent envoys to Earth not as conquerors, but as students. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy began to listen instead of command. Humanity's defiance had become a lesson carved into the stars. On Earth, scientists uncovered the last surviving archive of Project Echo. It revealed that the technology wasn't built to summon power, but to awaken empathy across sentient minds. Its creators had understood something simple but profound. Fear could unite enemies, but memory could unite worlds. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't destruction, it was connection. That was why the signal had shown the galaxy their past, their pain, their resilience. It wasn't meant to end a war, it was meant to end the illusion that anyone truly stood alone. The captain of the Vigilant Dawn stood one last time at the viewport, watching the quiet shimmer of the moon. Somewhere in the darkness, that mysterious presence still lingered, the ancient voice that had spoken across time. He didn't know what it meant or what it wanted, but he knew this. Whatever humanity had awakened wasn't a threat. It was a reminder that the stars were not beyond their reach. They were part of them. The fleet slowly descended back toward Earth, battered but unbroken. Across continents and colonies, lights came back on. Families reunited. The first message broadcast to the entire galaxy was simple. We remember. It carried no hatred, no demand, only truth. And in that truth lay the quiet promise that the galaxy would never again underestimate humanity. For in every heartbeat, every breath, and every act of defiance, the same rule echoed across the stars. Hope was humanity's oldest power, and it was never going to fade.